Welcome to This Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're here with us today because we're embarking on a pretty profound journey. We're going to explore a fundamental shift, moving away from the rigid limits of our rational, everyday minds and stepping right into the pure, liberating freedom of spiritual realization. It's a massive paradigm shift, really. We're talking about the leap from just gathering data and memorizing religious dogmas to actually experiencing pure presence. So get comfortable, and let's uncover how we can move beyond our intellect to tap into something much, much deeper.
Okay, let's dive into this. Think about it for a second. Do you know God, or do you just know words about God? It's a really striking distinction, isn't it? I mean, we spend so much time reading, discussing, endlessly theorizing, and searching for brand new synonyms for the divine. But we have to challenge ourselves here. Is our spirituality just mechanical memory? Is it just a collection of borrowed information and human opinions? Or is it a living, breathing reality? This crucial question is literally the foundation of everything we're exploring today.
To really grasp what we're talking about, we need to contrast these two completely different states. On one side, we have knowing about God. This is the realm of the intellect. It operates entirely in the finite world of thoughts, descriptions, and, honestly, a deep sense of separation. But on the other side, we have experiencing God, which is the realm of the heart. This isn't about belief at all. It's a direct, unified, and palpable experience. It's a self-validating fact that you feel right inside your own being, like a warm, gentle, comforting presence. The difference? Well, it's exactly like reading a menu versus actually tasting the meal.
Right, so that brings us to Act 1, the intellectual trap.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how for centuries, humanity has basically taken the infinite and unintentionally reduced it to an intellectual toy. Despite all our best efforts to spiritualize our concepts, the limited capacity of the mortal mind has actually been this huge obstacle. We've tried to capture the divine using mere theology, essentially trapping a boundless reality inside the tiny, confined box of human intellect. The mystic Joel Goldsmith makes a super bold statement here. He says, nothing we can think about God is the truth, nothing we can read in a book about God is the truth. He's warning us that this constant intellectual game is really a subtle form of mental idolatry. So instead of worshiping idols made of wood or stone like the ancients did, we're praying to our own mental concepts. We're worshiping our thoughts rather than experiencing the living presence.
And that leads directly into what Goldsmith calls the veil. You see, by turning the divine into an intellectual concept, we end up creating an external deity. We create this being out there who needs to be feared, bargained with, or petitioned. And this personalization creates a massive illusion. It builds a false wall of separation between you and the divine presence. By believing God is separate from your own being, you're effectively locking yourself inside your own ego and cutting yourself completely off from the actual flow of spiritual grace.
Let's move right into Act 2, the barrier of the ego.
We really need to pause and contemplate how our own rational consciousness actively blocks us from mystical experience. It's not that the divine is hiding from us. It's that the very structure of our everyday analytical mind is built like a fortress, keeping the living reality completely shut out. Looking at historical concepts, the famous psychologist Carl Jung observed that our ideas of the divine relied heavily on physical forms and corporeal limits. We are so utterly captivated, so entangled in our subjective consciousness and the material world we can see and touch, that we completely ignore the vast unconscious psyche and its natural symbols.
Jung actually shared a pretty powerful anecdote about a rabbi who was asked why God no longer speaks to people the way he did in the old days. The rabbi's answer just hits the nail on the head. He said, "Nowadays there is no longer anybody who can bow low enough. We're simply too proud and honestly, maybe a little too obsessed with our own cleverness to humble ourselves." Let's be real, as humans we love overcomplicating things with massive theology textbooks, rather than simply quieting our conscious minds to actually hear the divine voice.
Eckhart Tolle brilliantly defines exactly what's keeping us from bowing low. He calls it the ego. The ego is our constant identification with form. Now that form could be our physical body, our job title, our thoughts, or even our deepest theological beliefs. This identification is what gives us our perception of self. But here's the catch. As long as we identify with these finite forms, we remain entirely separated from the formless presence. We effectively imprison our spirit in matter, which blocks any chance of true spiritual realization.
But don't worry, there is a way out. Welcome to Act 3, Despoiling Concepts.
Let's move to and see how this built. To truly experience the divine, we have to cross over to direct realization. And the absolute only way to do that is by completely abandoning our learned dogmas.
We have to strip away the intellectual concepts and essentially unlearn everything the ego has so proudly built up over a lifetime. Both Joel Goldsmith and physicist Russell Targ point to a very specific method for silencing the mind's constant chatter to find what is famously called the peace that passes all understanding. The steps are surprisingly simple, but they require profound surrender. Step 1. Withdraw from the material senses. Step 2. Stop planning, stop reasoning, and just relax the analytical mind. Step 3. Simply listen to the silent voice within. You really have to take the personal initiative to quiet the noise.
Entering this state isn't about gaining more knowledge or adding another heavy textbook to your shelf. It's the exact opposite, actually. It's about entering a state of absolute quietness and innocent not knowing. It requires the analytical mind to step entirely aside. When you empty your mind completely, the truth finally has the space it needs to migrate from your intellect all the way down into your heart. The great mythologist Joseph Campbell pointed out that as long as you maintain the illusion of a separate ego, you automatically maintain the illusion of a separate deity out there to be feared or adored. But when you remove that illusion, you arrive at the ancient wisdom of oneness, captured so beautifully in the Sanskrit phrase tat tvam asi, which translates to "you are that." In this state, the dividing line between the observer and the observed completely evaporates.
Which brings us to the climax of our journey, Act 4, the living reality.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens next. When you move past the intellect, when the ego collapses, and the finite forms finally fall away, the barrier of separation doesn't just crack, it completely vanishes. You stop knowing about the divine from the outside, and you start participating in it from the inside. It's a lot like a dancer disappearing completely into the ecstasy of a dance, until only the movement remains. This is that continuous state of unity Goldsmith writes about, where it literally becomes impossible to tell where God ends and we begin. It's the exact state of consciousness that allowed the Master to say, "He who sees me sees the Father. I and my Father are one." It's no longer a belief to be debated. It is a permanent, living reality operating within, through, and as you.
Now, while the theological beliefs usually lead to endless logical arguments and divisions, direct experience of the divine is completely beyond human controversy. And the fruits of this direct, unmediated experience, they are immense. We're talking about freedom by grace, finding true peace right in the midst of war, experiencing inner abundance during times of global panic, and achieving constant physical harmony. This realization provides a permanent, unshakable harmony that those artificial, temporary pleasures of the rational mind could never, ever replicate. Eckhart Tolle summarizes this perfectly by reminding us that the ultimate truth is completely formless. When the external forms we so desperately identify with finally collapse, or when they're removed by life's changing circumstances, our true identity is revealed. We finally realize we are not the temporary forms. We are the omnipresent consciousness that exists before all forms and all identifications. This formless presence is literally the very peace of God itself. So, the crucial point is, I want to leave you with this incredibly powerful, lingering question. Take a moment to really let it sink in. If you strip away all forms, your job, your physical body, your history, all the names you call yourself, and every single theological thought you've ever learned, who are you? When there is absolutely nothing left for the intellect to identify with, what remains? What remains is simply this: I am. As Tolle points out, your supreme, true self is not, I am this or I am that. It is just the pure, unadulterated consciousness of I am. This is the ultimate shift from intellect to presence. I sincerely hope this explainer has sparked a deep curiosity within you to look past the words, to quiet the analytical mind, and to explore that living reality for yourself. Thank you so much for joining me today, and keep exploring that boundless presence within.